Thanks for joining us so far. We're gonna wait just a couple minutes. We're expecting more folks to join us, so we'll give them another minute or two to see if they get on. Good morning, Joan. Glad you're on the call. So again, thanks everyone for joining us. And while we're waiting for a few more people to trickle in, feel free to orient yourself to some of our features here on Zoom. We are in a webinar situation here, and that means you can send in questions and comments using the chat box. So feel free, if you'd like to practice using the chat box, you can go ahead and introduce yourselves. Let us know where you're from and maybe what type of farm you are connected to. Just to be sure you can figure out how to send us a message in the chat. And then we also have a Q&A function that you can use to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation. We are planning on having, a little bit of time at the end for some more interactive Q&A. So we might answer your questions midstream, or we might hold off until the end, but feel free again to introduce yourself in the chat window and use the chat or the Q&A function at any time. So we're just past the hour, so I'm gonna get started. My name is Mary Kate McKenzie, and I'm the Farm Business Management Specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension's South Central New York Dairy and Field Crops team. So that means I work primarily with dairy farms across the 6-county region. And I've been working with farms for, I guess, almost 2 years now on issues related to human resource management, and specifically this onboarding project that Rich Stupp is leading through the Cornell Ag Workforce Development. So throughout that time, we've experimented with some different tools and techniques to help farms improve their onboarding systems. And one of those tools is Google Classroom. So that's the tool that we're going to be sharing with you guys and discussing today. So this is our agenda. We're hoping to make this sort of a short call, about 30 minutes. So I'm briefly going to go over some of the pros and cons of using Google Classroom. And then we're going to dive right into a how-to demonstration. So this is mostly going to be a technical demonstration of how to actually use the different features in Google Classroom and how to create, to take an existing template that we've created and customize that for your farm. And then at the end, we'll hopefully have a little bit of opportunity for discussion. I'd like to talk a little bit about how folks here on the call actually envision utilizing this tool in your business. And then we'll go over next steps to be sure everyone knows how they can get a hold of the template that we've created. All right, so as far as pros and cons of Google Classrooms, there's a lot in its favor. On the pro side, this is a free application that anybody can use. It's fairly intuitive and user-friendly. it incorporates a lot of different media formats. So that means you can have text, photographs, links, videos, documents, different, Word and Excel documents, and even create your own quizzes, all within this format. So it allows us to incorporate lots of different types of materials into an employee training. Because it's a cloud-based application, it's also accessible from any device that's connected to the internet. So if you have multiple farm computers or farm offices, you can connect to it from anywhere on the farm, and you can even connect to it with a smartphone. It's fully customizable, so that means that you can use this application to create an onboarding tool or a series of activities and materials that are completely specific to your farm and your operation. And then finally, it supports multiple teachers as well as multiple students. So if you have more than one manager on your farm that's involved in training and onboarding employees, all of those managers can have access to this tool and can edit it and update it and use it with employees. So it was easy for me to think of lots of pros. It was a little bit harder to think of the cons, but I will say that you do need a Google account to use Google Classroom. So if you don't have one, you need to set that up. There is some time that you need to invest in the initial setup for your farm, although the template that we've created can go a long way to reducing that initial setup. And then once you've created it, you can't just completely walk away from it. It does require some ongoing management to make sure that the materials are up to date and to make sure that the employees are, working through the materials, or the employees are utilizing it and getting out of it what they need. So at this point, I'm going to jump over to Google Classroom and we're going to dive into the demonstration. So hopefully you guys are all kind of familiar with this screen, right? This is our basic Google search window. So if you can get here, and then you can log into your Google account, which is up here. You can see I'm logged in with my personal email. We can't connect with our Cornell emails. So like I said, you do need a Google account. But once you're logged in, you can navigate to this little cube, which has all of our different Google applications. And there you should find Google Classroom as one option. When you arrive in my Google Classroom, you actually find a lot of different classes because I've created different versions for different farms. But we're going to go into my template today, and that one is called XYZ Dairy Onboarding. Once we're into our Google class, there's a few different tabs up at the top that we need to be able to utilize. The main two tabs we're going to use when working on these classes is the classwork tab and the people tab. So actually I'm going to start here with the people tab. So this is where you can see who has access to your class and what their role is in the class. So in my template that I've created here, I have access, and Lucas also has access. He'll introduce himself later on and talk about how we can actually share this template with you. You can also see we don't have any students signed up yet for the class because this is just a template. But if we wanted to add a student, we would do that here. So we can click on that little icon, and then we can either copy the link for the class and paste it into an email invitation, or we can just type the name or email address of our student in here. So I could invite myself with my other email address to be a student in the class. And it won't let me using my Cornell email, but so you get the idea. So you can set up yourself and other managers as teachers for the class, and the teachers have access to edit and update the content. And then you can add employees as students here if they have their own email addresses. Some farms actually just use another farm email for the student login. So if your employees don't have their own email addresses, or you don't want to add them individually, you can just use a general farm email address, and then the students would all use that same email to log in. So after we get the right people set up for the course, where we're gonna need to spend the bulk of our time getting this template set up for the farm is here in this classwork section. So the classwork section shows us all of the content that we currently have developed and included. And because this is a template, we have already pre-populated it with tons of content and information that farms just need to review and possibly edit and customize to make sense for your farm. So the content is sorted into these different topics. So I have a topic called welcome. This green button here on the top left would allow us to create new topics, as well as different types of content, which we'll go through here bit by bit. But the first take-home message here is that we use topics to organize our content into categories that make sense, that we can have students. So we have 5 or 6 different topic areas in this course, starting with the welcome. So here I'm going to demonstrate just kind of diving into how we navigate, as well as how we can edit some of this content. So if we click on our first material here, our first content area, we have some text. So again, this is all been pre-populated in the template, and it says, welcome to XYZ Dairy Farm. So I might like to edit that and insert the name of my own individual farm in that content area. So we can click on these 3 little dots over here. It gives us the option to delete, to copy, to move this content, or we can choose to edit it. When we select edit, it brings us up in a new window. And instead of XYZ Dairy Farm, maybe my farm is named ABC Dairy Farm. And you can see we have, we've created this template to be bilingual in English and Spanish to the fullest extent possible. And so you'll have to keep that in mind as you edit it. You may not have Spanish speakers in your business, which means you could delete all of the Spanish sections. But if you do edit the English text and you have Spanish speaking employees, you would want to think about how you could update the translation as well. So I've just edited the text here in this welcome section. And then I also have a photograph of my farm team that I'd like to add. So to add additional types of content, there's a little paperclip add button we can select, and it gives us several different options for where we can source that content. We can bring something in from Google Drive if we use Google Drive to store files. We can add a link to another website. We can add a file from our computers, and we can link to a YouTube video. In this case, I'm going to add a file from my computer, and I'm going to upload this from my computer. So I'm going to choose this browse button, and I've got a bunch of content here ready to go. This is my photo. So I'm going to select the photo and open it. And you can see that Google is going to upload this file and save it in the cloud for access through the class. So now my photo's been uploaded and I've edited my text, and so I'm ready to save this section. So I've got my save button in the upper right. When we save, that updates the section and brings us right back to this classwork page. So that's one example of how to edit something. We're gonna go through a couple more just to drive the point home. So the next item here is the mission statement for the farm. And we have text here instructing the student to read the mission statement, what the purpose is of our mission statement, but we don't in fact have a mission statement here. So I'm gonna have to edit this to upload the mission statement for my farm. So again, I can go to my paperclip to add a file. I'll have to locate that file on my computer. And here it is. We've got farm mission statement in English. So I'm going to open that one. And then I'd also like to add the Spanish version of my mission statement. And I don't see that here. So I guess I'm going to skip that for now, but I can always come back and add more later. So now I'm going to save this section. Now you can see that in addition to the text that's here, my mission statement is available. So I can take a closer look at that just by clicking on it, and it brings up an image of my mission statement right here in the same window. And then I can either click on this arrow in the upper left, or I can just use the escape key to come back to my coursework page. Under organizational structure, this is another item that's going to be unique to your farm. So you will want to edit that section. And in this case, we're going to add a file that is an image of the organizational structure on our farm. Once that appears, I can save that section. And here I can view, this is kind of not a very great image, but this gives you the idea of something you could create for your farm and include in this onboarding class. So just to continue, here's some examples of facility overviews from different farms. So this is another great item to include, and you can create one with really simple, in PowerPoint or in a Word document with simple shapes, or you could create an image, like take a Google Maps image of your farm and just label the different buildings with how they're used. So in this case, you would want to delete these two items and then add your own farm image for your own farm. We have a basic health and safety section, which is pretty general. So you might actually be able to include this without making any edits for your farm. And it has some PDFs that talk about specific safety risks and how to avoid them. So again, this is something you could edit and change if you have different risks on your farm that you want your employees to know about right from the beginning of their employment. And then here's an example of a quiz. So this is a quiz covering some basic information about the farm. The idea here is you can use this to get some feedback from your employees just to make sure that they've actually engaged with the content that you've presented so far. So the quiz is also created in Google. And if we click on that, it'll take us right to the quiz. This is the input screen. So this is what you would see if you were a student. So we've got questions in English and Spanish about who is your direct supervisor, who should you talk to if you need help, name one general safety hazard, and what should you do if you notice a safety hazard. So you can see these questions are very general. They could apply to your farm. However, if you wanted to edit this quiz, you have a little pencil icon in the lower right, and that takes us into the edit, the area where we can actually edit it. So from here, we can change the title to be the name of our farm. And we can change questions and various other things. This is also where we can see if we've gotten any responses, what our students have submitted for the quiz. And you can see this quiz has never been taken, so we don't have any responses here. But once we make those changes, they should be saved in our and transferred back to our classroom. So that's the welcome section, and just some, kind of a deep dive into the different areas and how you're going to want to edit them and make changes to reflect your own farm. This next topic area, the new employee paperwork, we've got a lot of links here. We did not include the PDF forms because they can change. So rather than having an outdated form included in your onboarding process, we've included links to the website where you can download the current version of the form. So here, if we wanted to edit this, you can see we can, and that takes us to the page where we can download our I-9 form to verify employee eligibility. And then just for example, if we copy that link and come back here, we can choose that X to get rid of a link. And then if we want to add a link back, we use our paperclip add button. We choose the link option and we just paste that link right in there. So we got our link back, and we will save. So we have similar links for different forms for our tax withholding forms, federal and state. We have a link for the New York State pay notice and work agreement form. Animal care policies, we've included the forms from the FARM program here, which provides a like an ethics agreement that you have employees sign on day one. But you could also remove these forms and include your own if your farm has its own animal care policy. We have a form for you if you'd like to record employee contact information and emergency contact info for each new employee, and then a space to provide direct deposit information. Our next section has a whole series of dairy safety training videos. Again, if you're from a different type of farm, you might want to change this section and include some safety videos more appropriate for your commodity. But just to give you the example, these have links to YouTube videos, and they are embedded here in the Google Classroom so that when your student clicks on the video, they can actually watch it without leaving the classroom, right? So you're not just sending them down a rabbit hole on YouTube, but they can watch their video here, and then they can bring themselves right back to the coursework. So we've got a bunch of videos. Then we have a section on HR policies, and you can see these are all set up as drafts. So a draft means that you can see it as the teacher, but your students will not see it until it's been published. And the reason we have it set up this way, we have kind of a sample employee handbook. So if your farm has its own employee handbook, you could include that here, and then you're sort of done because all of your policies should be reflected in your handbook. However, if you do not have an employee handbook, you're still going to need to provide new employees with information about some really key important policies. So instead of uploading an employee handbook, we could go into the section on time recording and payroll. We could edit it, and we could just type in what our policy is and explain how employees need to record their time, when payroll is processed, and how they should expect to be paid, what they should do if they think there's a mistake. So if we don't have a handbook, we can just describe individual policies as needed. And then we need to post it to convert it from being a draft to being a live content. We have to select that post option, and it's gonna ask us if we're sure we want to post it, and we can post. Once it's posted, you'll see it shows up here as a bright green icon instead of the faded gray. So just to wrap up the demo, because we're getting close to time, there's a section here on employee housing, and this is pre-populated with a sample housing agreement. So if you have your own housing agreement for your farm workers, you would want to include that here. The housing section also includes some really fantastic resources from Rich Stupp's Cornell Ag Workforce Development site, including this worker housing orientation in English and Spanish. And it's also got some additional housing resources from the Dairy FARM program. We've got the next section covers standard operating procedures, and these ones are all blank. So these are like placeholders for you and your farm to come and enter information or upload documentation of your most important standard operating procedures. And again, the idea is just to give employees some procedures right at the beginning of their employment. This training or this template also includes many of the resources that you need to complete the sexual harassment training, prevention training for employees. This is really handy, right? I know this is not everyone's favorite topic, but it's really nice to have a streamlined way to check that box and be in compliance with our sexual harassment prevention training. So here we've got the policy, and this is what we've included here. So you would need to either edit this template or upload your own sexual harassment policy to the classroom to be in compliance. So we've got the policy, and then we've got, again, embedded right here in the Google Classroom, we've got training videos in English and Spanish, part 1, and then part 2, I believe, are kind of the case studies scenarios. So you can have employees, again, watch these videos right here in this classroom. And then farms are required to submit their own complaint forms or make complaint forms available to employees. So that can be included here as well. And then we've got another quiz to make sure that employees have engaged with the material and that they understand what the expectations are around sexual harassment. The final section of our template is really specific to farms that are participating in our onboarding program, because we have a follow-up survey for the employees that go through onboarding. And so this section here just provides a link for employees to go directly to our Qualtrics survey and provide feedback to Cornell on how they felt about their onboarding process. So if you're not part of the onboarding project, you don't necessarily need to have this survey link, but it might be worth thinking for yourselves about asking employees for a little bit of feedback, after they've had some time on the job, just so you know as managers what you could do better next time you're bringing on new employees. So that concludes my demonstration of our template. And again, this is a template that we've created specifically to share with farms. So we can create a copy of this template and share it with you for you to customize and update specifically for your farm. I'm going to stop sharing. I see lots of activity in the Q&A and the chat, and we're just getting close to wrapping up. So I'm going to come back here and carry on. Okay, yeah, so my take-home message is that we've created this template for farms because we want to help you guys save time setting up a training tool for onboarding your employees. You can't just take our template and go. You have to spend some time customizing it and publish the content that's unique to your farm. But there are Cornell Cooperative Extension educators that are available to assist you with that process. So if you get stuck or you need help we can certainly help you. So I'm going to pause here and check out the Q&A window. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So let me see. Can various teachers have different levels of access? And the answer is, I believe, no. However, you don't need to use Google Classroom to collect any confidential HR data from your employees, right? This is a tool mainly to provide information to employees, and we use some quizzes to make sure that employees are engaged, but we're not asking employees to submit their social security numbers or anything like that through the Google Classroom. Can we add links to other programs such as safety training software, etc.? So we can add links to other websites, but I don't know of any way to link the Google Classroom to another software program on your computer. You could certainly have a page or a piece of content in the Google Classroom that instructs an employee to go and open up this other software program and complete another training. Are students required to have a Gmail email address? That's a good question. I don't think so, but I may be wrong. They may need to have a Gmail account to log in to the classroom. And then, is it possible for users to listen to the content within the description that's typed rather than reading it? That is another great question, and I do not know the answer to that. All right, can we verify if people have completed tasks or have read the documents? So if your students are signed up as you know, with their own email address in the Google Class, you should be able to track some of their activities. I just saw Elizabeth raise your hand. So Julia, I don't know if you want to unmute her. Maybe I can do that. Liz, you can unmute yourself if you want to chime in.
Oh, I was just going to say the question about the Gmail account. They don't need one, but some email accounts have settings that don't allow Google Classroom. So like the Cornell one, for example, we can't use Google Classroom through Cornell because we're an educational institution, and we would if we were going to use Google Classroom, we would have to pay. And so that would have a conflict that way, but they don't necessarily have to have a new Gmail account.
But Liz, I found it's hard to get Google Classroom to come up on your computer if you don't have a Google account.
Oh, you have to have a Google account, but you can sign up for that Google account with a non-Gmail email. I guess that's what I was saying. Like, you don't have to get a Gmail account. You just have to sign up for Google with your non-Gmail account.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so back to the question about, can we track students as they work through the course materials? And again, the answer to that is they must be logged in as an individual student. And then it also depends on the type of content that you create. So most of the content in the template is set up as just material that students can read versus being an assigned task. So if it's important to you to track student progress through the course, you may want to create items as tasks, because those tasks, I believe, will give you the opportunity to see who has completed which tasks. And I guess this just goes back to my earlier point, and that is that you're still going to need to manage this process. This is not like a full service online course where you send access to your employee and they work through it all by themselves and you don't have to think about it. This is really a tool for you to organize material and make it easily available to your employees. But most likely you're still going to be, or a manager is still going to need to be engaged with them, following up with them, making sure they're getting things done, making sure they don't, you know, their questions are being answered. So I would not think of this as something that is going to do all the onboarding work for you, but more as a tool that can help you get super well organized and make sure that you're providing a consistent and efficient process to every employee that you hire. Does Google Classroom have a setting or feature that translates the navigation headings? I would say not that I know of. There could be some sort of other applications out there that can do that, but I don't have experience with that. Our employee response is confidential. So in this example, in the existing template, the only interactive components where the students are submitting information are those quizzes. And the quiz responses are only available to instructors. They would not be available or visible to other students. How does an owner or manager confirm what an employee has completed? I think that's a great question that each farm is going to have to work out for themselves in terms of deciding how to implement this on their farm. I think, you know, one way would be to kind of assign the task to the employee and have them, if you want to have them sign off on a form that they complete that section, that's one way you could do it. You may be able to set things up to track the employee progress through the Google Classroom. So that's another possible way to do it. But I think that'll take a little bit of trial and error, you know, in terms of implementing this on your own farm and figuring out what works for you. So, yep, and then there's a couple more questions about that. How do we track completion? And this Google Classroom tool does not necessarily solve that question for you. You're gonna have to, I think, you know, work out how to track things either through quiz. I mean, you could have a quiz at the end of every section where you would get an employee response to verify that they've absorbed the information. You know, there's different, it's flexible and there's different ways you could try to set it up to do that. Is there any type of forum or discussion feature? I imagine there might be, but I'm not familiar with it. So, Julie, do you want to answer that? No.
I would guess the easiest way to do that is you can actually like post a question as a teacher. That's a different kind of content. So if you post a question, students can respond to the question. So that kind of forms that discussion channel.
Thanks, Lucas. And I'm feeling like we've answered a bunch of questions and I don't want to stop the stream of questions. It's coming in fast, but this might be a good time if you want to just introduce yourself and maybe say a couple words about the onboarding project and then what people should do if they want to get access to the template.
Sure, yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Lucas. I'm a current junior at Cornell and kind of an intern with the Ag Workforce Development team, so helping out with some stuff and specifically related to Google Classroom. I'm probably the best point of contact if you're interested in getting a copy of the template, which Mary Kate just walked through. So you can send me an email at ls678@cornell.edu. And that my information is also on the onboarding page. So if you have questions that come up after this when you're playing around with it, feel free to send that to me. And then also when you're looking at the page, if you have questions about onboarding or interested in joining the project, you can also send them my way and we can connect you to have you join that.
Oops, thanks, Lucas. So Julie, I don't know if you've been keeping track. I think I've worked through most of the questions in the Q&A.
Yes, if your question wasn't answered, just post it again in the Q&A quick right now, so we can make sure that that's covered. A recording of this will be posted to the onboarding page of the Cornell Ag Workforce Development site. That link is posted in chat. So if you want to look in chat, that's there. It's also will be at the link that Lucas just posted. You'll receive a recording of this emailed to you as well if you registered for the workshop.
Well, thanks everyone. And yeah, feel free to follow up with me with any additional questions if I missed your question in the Q&A, and feel free to get in touch with Lucas if you would like to get a hold of this template for your own farm. But thanks again for joining us.